Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here for another edition of Shaun Solo, and today I want to talk about Mafia 3, developed by Hangar 13, published by 2K. I've been looking forward to Hangar. I almost said Hangar 13. I've been looking forward to Mafia 3 for at least like the past year. Like wasn't one of my most hotly anticipated things, but the closer it got to release, the more excited I kind of got about it. Um, it's kind of got a unique setting. It looked like the story was going to be unique. I'm actually a fan of Mafia 2, which actually was fairly well reviewed back when it came out in 2010. I've just because Mafia 3 is coming out and I listen to some gaming podcasts and whatnot, I've heard people talk about Mafia 2 and they don't really look back on it very fondly. A lot of the criticism is that like, well, it's an open world game that doesn't really need to be open world and that it's slow and paced poorly. As far as like the open not needing to be an open world thing, I would probably tend to kind of agree. There's a few times in the game where it takes advantage of the open world, but largely it could have been just kind of more of a linear game with some mild driving stuff, I guess, if they really wanted to. For the set piece moments, they could have done that. But like it didn't really bother me, and there's kind of stuff to do. It's just none of it felt like very well developed or thought out. Honestly, it's almost like they were just like, well, we have an open world, so we have to like let them do something. So here's some stupid little side objective crap. It's kind of like, but it was actually before an era, which is like of the modern time when we talk about open worlds and we talk about like just recently, we're like action open world games, like say your Grand Theft Autos or not that Grand Theft Auto hadn't come out, but I guess what am I thinking of? Like Mad Max, Just Cause 3, for example. I just actually played those, so I actually have a good frame of reference for kind of modern third person like action open world games. Because this would be more akin to those than a Grand Theft Auto. I think a lot of people might look at this and like think of Grand Theft Auto, and if you go into the game with those kind of expectations or that kind of thought, like it's going to be that in depth or that well developed of a world, then you're going to be really disappointed. Just the short and long of it is, I think I had fun with Mafia 3 while acknowledging that it is a fairly mediocre game. I cannot say that this is a game that's going to blow anyone's mind. The gameplay is some of the more tedious of these kind of games. And like I said, I just played Mad Max and Just Cause 3 like over the past month, I guess. I guess it was like sometime mid August to like mid September. I spent like a month and I played the shit out of those games. Like did almost everything. And not because they're good. They weren't. I just was looking for something to literally just shut my brain off and do some mindless activities, and because I have a hard time sleeping, so it's kind of one of those things that it's almost like if I wasn't in the mood to like read, which is just pro tip, if you ever wanted to try to fall asleep, just start reading a book. Kind of sometimes, unless the book's really good, then you're gonna be just screw yourself over. But so I would stay up at night and like listen to podcasts or there's a lot of history podcasts and stuff I listen to. So it's good just to have that on the background while I kind of just play these mindless open world games. And Mafia 3 like really lined up with those more than something more impressive. Like, Grand Theft Auto 5 for all of its faults, and as much as I don't love Grand Theft Auto 5, I don't. Like, I mean, I like it. I think it's a really well made experience. Like it's so well built, that world, like you cannot have respect for it. Mafia 3 is not like that. It is much more, like I said, akin to Mad Max or Just Cause 3. And the kind of stuff that's in the game, the gameplay loop is mildly disappointing in the same way I suppose that those games are mildly disappointing. You just are doing the same thing over and over again, no matter where you go. The game is very deceitful, I would say. Mad Max was kind of the same way, where the first few hours are really impressive. I would say Mafia 3 is a little bit more deceitful in the sense that like it kind of sells you an experience you don't really get. Uh, it feels like the first few hours are very heavily curated, almost linear to a certain point. Not totally linear, but they feel more linear. and they're telling you this kind of rich story, and you're getting to know these kind of like what feels like well drawn, well fleshed out characters. And then once the game kind of starts, a few hours after about an hour and a half, 3 hours, depending on who you are, like it kind of starts feeling disappointing because the gameplay loop is the same no matter where you go. Like I said, so you go, you get once you get your sub boss, you go to areas basically, you do enough damage to like get these, I don't know what you call them, like crime bosses to come out of hiding, and then you go kill them. They usually do it twice per area, and that's the gameplay loop. And you just do that over and over again, basically until the end of the game. There's not much variance in the missions and stuff, which is why the first 3 hours feel like such a betrayal because there's a ton of variance in the first few hours of the game. It's not until the game actually starts where it's like, here you go, here's your open world, go play around, go check out this sandbox, have fun. That's when it starts getting like tedious and disappointing, and it's really long. Excuse me. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. If I'm sniffling, it's not because of all the cocaine I've been doing. It's just the cold. The cocaine is a separate issue. But yeah, so I was really, really kind of like done with it when I was done with it. It took me a long time. Real relative, I suppose. A game like this doesn't feel like it needed to be like 25, 30 hours. I've played it for a long time, man. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like exactly how much. It's such a blur. I'm trying to think of exactly like how much time I actually spent playing it. And I gotta say, it was at least 25 or 30 hours. And I did a fair amount of the side stuff. I stopped doing it, I would say, definitely by the last like third of my time with it. I was just like, all right, fuck this. Like, I'm not getting any real benefit for like grinding through the side stuff and unlocking and doing more than I need to and trying to get more money from rackets and stuff. Like, at a certain point in the game, even like the monetary system doesn't matter anymore. Like, you are you're gonna have enough money for whatever you need. Like, definitely, it just stops being a problem. You don't even think about it, honestly. I would say that I felt that way about halfway through the game, where I just didn't even worry about anything anymore. I had most of my stuff like upgraded. But like I said, I did do a lot of the extra side stuff. I kind of grinded it out for a while. Like, definitely my first, probably like, half to 2/3 of the game. So I was trying to just like wring everything out of it. And it was kind of in the same. I got in the same mode that I got with Mad Max and Just Cause, where I would just kind of shut my brain off, put on a podcast, and just play the game and just mindlessly play it. Because it's not a very difficult game. I did a stream and I had the difficulty on easy, because usually when I stream I just knock it on easy just so I don't get hung up on a stream and I can just play the game, kind of relax, because it's hard enough talking while you're playing a game. Like, it's like you doing that split brain thing. But anyways, so I forgot that I left it on easy, and then I was playing the game. I was like, holy shit, this is fucking ridiculous. This is so easy. So I just bumped it up to normal. I'm not one of those. I'm not like a sadist. I don't never do like the extreme difficulty. I just don't care about that stuff. But I did put it back up to normal or medium or whatever the fuck it was, and still not much of a challenge. The AI is real dumb. Real dumb, which it kind of has to be, based on their level design. I feel like, you go through a lot of buildings and a lot of warehouses, and you stealth. Like, it tells you can you can go in guns a-blazing or stealth. You really need to stealth most of your way through this game, so you're meant to go stealth like through the buildings, and like the line of sight and the way that they've constructed these buildings is not so that you could successfully stealth around if they had more, like, say, quote-unquote normal lines of sight. So I think they had to kind of nerf like the vision cones of what the AI can see. Because if you're more than, like, say, 20 feet from somebody, they're not really going to acknowledge you. Like, even if you, like, grab a dude and shove a Bowie knife in his throat. Because the game gets brutal. There's some brutal, like, violence in this game. Some of it felt appropriate, some of it felt gratuitous. I mean, I'm not a person that's bothered by that, but even I was like, holy shit, like, wow, he's fucking like ripping that guy's throat out with that knife. That's kind of crazy. Um, just the visceral nature of it, I suppose. Because it wants to like tell you like again, just kind of shifting abruptly over to the narrative. Like it wants to tell you kind of this more nuanced story about like race and what it was like to be black in the the late '60s in the South. It takes place in New Bordeaux, stand-in for New Orleans, and but it really like it never really rises to that challenge. A lot of it feels like window dressing. A lot of it feels cartoony, and not in a way to say that things weren't like that. Because basically, like you'll be walking down the street as your character Lincoln Clay, and people are like, "Oh, black person. Oh, what's that N word doing?" Like, and once that kind of it becomes the game almost like trivializes it in a sense that it feels like novelty. Um, which I'm not saying is a fair criticism. Honestly, it's just kind of how I felt while I was playing it a little bit. I was just like, all right, well, I get it, but not every single fucking person you run into is gonna be like, "Oh, what are you doing there, N-word?" Like, it's just not. I mean, I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm just being ignorant of the way it was for people back then. But it did not do a very good job of saying like putting myself in those shoes because essentially Lincoln Clay is Rambo. He's like John Rambo. He's like a Vietnam vet who runs around with some guns and a giant knife that he uses and he guts people and shit with. Not unlike John Rambo in First Blood. Although John Rambo doesn't actually kill anybody. So John Rambo is not even as bad as Lincoln Clay, but and he looks crazy. Like that's the thing, like the things you do in the game and like in your character model and stuff like that, you look like a scary motherfucker. You act like a scary motherfucker. So there is a little bit of a disconnect when the NPCs act like they're scared of you. Because they might have, like, there's kind of a reason to be scared of Lincoln Clay. Beyond the color of his skin. Like, he's just a brutal fucking dude. But, and then it kind of, like, tries to get into, like, the main story. It just basically becomes a boilerplate, like, revenge story, like, blaxploitation movie kind of feel to it. But I will say this though, even though it's kind of like it's like a B movie with like well written dialogue. The writing is and the performances are actually pretty decent across the board. Nobody like blew me out of the water or anything, but I would say like it was I was pretty okay with it. There's like a framing device where the game is excuse me. The way it decided to tell its story was through like it used like this documentary style, this cinema verite documentary style thing where you flash forward to like interviews in the current time. That felt. Some people really liked it. I didn't like because there was some shit in there where they would like not just like foreshadow what you were about to play, but sometimes they would just tell you. Like, there's a character that dies early on, and they mention by name that character dies right before you enter the scene where that character dies. And not to say that, like, oh, they gave away the twist or whatever, but it's just like, it felt weird. To me, that felt like it was like a weird disconnect between what they're doing in the documentary stuff. Like, it's like, I understand in a real documentary, you might do something like that, especially if you're talking about, like, a well-known figure. A historical figure, because the assumption is you kind of already know the main beats of that person's story, but you go into something like a fictional tale like this, like I don't know the major beats to this, so what the fuck. It also deals with things like pretty much like every corner of like kind of mafia style stuff, like from all over the world. Like so you have the Italians, and that's Vito Scarletta, the main character, or Scaletta rather. The main character from Mafia 2 shows up more as fan service. There's a little bit of a mention of his best friend Joey in the game. They kind of pay a little bit of lip service to that, but it never really goes anywhere. I tried to get as much as I could out of Vito just because I like Mafia 2, so I like that character, and I was like, oh, I want to see if I can learn as much as I can about him in this game, where he's been, what he's been doing. They don't really like lean too heavily on it because they don't expect you to have played Mafia 2 to like play this game. The other group is then there's the Haitians, which was a really interesting angle. And the game starts off with like being kind of versus the Haitians, and there's a lot of interesting stuff. And it kind of just like drops it and just to say like, well, we have to come together to fight this bigger threat, which I guess is fine. I kind of would have almost preferred if it was like, because like I don't know what the general public knows about like Haitians and Haitian crime and stuff, especially when they first were immigrating to the country. But like, it's fucking, there's some crazy shit that went down, and that would have been like really fertile ground, I guess. But like, the story just wants to make it more simplistic, though. Like, it wants just like us versus them, rather than like a more complex kind of thing where you got to worry about your allies. The last like kind of group that you interact with is the Irish, the Irish Mafia, and they're just like white trash. And they run a fucking junkyard. I'm Irish, so it was kind of like, just kind of made me laugh. Like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But but like, like the game, it has this thing where you can, once you've taken over a district, you can assign your underbosses, which is Cassandra, Vito, or Burke, and you can assign them areas. And if you don't assign somebody enough, another person might get mad at you, and based on like who you assign where or how many districts you give a person, like you get benefits from it. You kind of get like boosts and upgrades and stuff. Each underboss gives you like other like kind of passive abilities. But they're supposed to be angry. They could get angry at you. You got to keep everybody happy. You got to balance everything out, and you don't really have to. It never really matters. I was almost hoping that the narrative would be able to like kind of splinter based on your loyalties, because I tried to do that. Like, kind of, for some reason, like I just did not really give a shit about the character Burke, and I guess white guilt made me like side with Cassandra. But like, so I kind of like ignored Burke for a lot of the game and didn't really give him a ton of like foothold. Didn't give him a ton of control or ground, and nothing ever came of it. Nothing negative or positive. He would just like maybe make a comment like, "Why am I even here?" And that would be the end of it. Same thing with Cassandra. Early on, I was kind of like I said, I liked Vito because of the Mafia 2. And just for the sake of character continuity, I was like, I'm going to help Vito out. I'm going to give him like a lot of stuff, and I'm going to gain his loyalty, basically. Because there is like, you even get a trophy for gaining loyalty of like your underbosses. I didn't see, to me, it didn't seem like it really mattered. Honestly, I don't know. Like, maybe it's just me. Maybe I missed something. I don't think I did. Like I said, I played a lot of this game. Enough that where I should have noticed if it mattered or not. But it didn't feel like it really mattered. What else can I say about old Mafia 3 here? I don't know, like, it's like, but I will say this, that, like, I enjoyed my time with it. Even though I was kind of ready for it to be done when it was done, I did kind of enjoy my time. It feels like an old game. Like, a lot of the systems, it's kind of janky. Like, it feels like a mid-era PlayStation 3 game that's slightly, like, higher resolution. It's just a little, slightly prettier. Because New Bordeaux is not that impressive of an area, and I know that sounds, like, kind of reductive, maybe. But it never made me kind of stop and be like, wow, this is really, like, beautiful. And you get to know it really well. Like, you get to, like, kind of see the nooks and crannies of it, because it's not a very big world. There's no fast travel, so you're kind of having to drive or run or walk or whatever to a lot of places. And when I played the first, like, say, like, third of the game, I was actually, like, if it was under, let's say, 500 feet or meters away, whatever it was, whatever the unit of measurement they were using, I would just run there. Because I was unlocking, there's these junction boxes that you can unlock, and when you do that, it kind of reveals, like, collectibles and stuff in the world. So I was just doing that for the first few districts, and I never saw anything that was that impressive. It kind of like, almost like the criticism of Mafia 2 felt applicable to Mafia 3 in the sense where the world doesn't feel, like, realistically alive. Or like where the criticism you might, which is this is an entirely different kind of game, but like BioShock Infinite, like a lot of the criticism is like it doesn't feel like it's really alive. Not really, you know. I would say Mafia 3 is kind of like that. Um, I mean, like yeah, they'll react to you committing crime and run out and call the police, and you have a opportunity to shoot them or knock them out before they do so. But that's about the extent of the AI of like just the normal people that are walking around. And also in this game, kind of like Mafia 2, you have to somewhat follow the rules of the road. It's not super strict, but you can't just be arbitrarily banging into other cars and stuff. Or the cops, if the cops will see you, they'll be alerted. Or if enough people see you, if you do enough damage, somebody will run and call the cops. The cops are not very hard to get away from, honestly. Probably in terms of like open world police AI, probably the most simplistic. Um, if you can get out of their little bubble, like you're free, you're good, and it's never very hard. They're not ever super aggressive either. I'm trying to think like if I think there was maybe one time where I had a problem. But even if it's not mission essential that you escape from the police, if you don't escape from the police, you just get your checkpoint or whatever. But and then and you're fine. Like the police aren't after you anymore, and you'll probably be like at whatever safe house was closest. So sometimes, like if you really just don't want to deal with it, just let yourself die. If it's not part of the mission checklist, then you don't gotta worry about it. Other stuff, there was some glitches. I came into some glitches with the game. Some of the side missions, like not being able to complete them, which is for me is very frustrating. There is like these side missions where you gotta get these, like grab these boats full of marijuana, and I would go to the place where I was supposed to get the boat where the marker was, and the boat just wouldn't be there. I did it a bunch of times at a bunch of different junctions in the game, and my brother said he found a workaround where it's like, if you click on a different mission and just go to that area anyways, like it'll be there then, and then you can steal it, and then once you start driving, select that mission and it'll tell you where to go. But which is just a bummer. It was a little janky, honestly. I was actually surprised. I played it for PlayStation 4. Seemed like even the PC crowd had a little bit more trouble with it than the console crowd. So the port was not amazing or anything. But so at the end of the day, I suppose I'll just I've been talking for a little over 20 minutes here. I guess I'll just start wrapping it up. I would give it a very lukewarm positive. It would be like a very like tepid recommendation. I cannot like at $60, which my brother got me for my birthday by surprise. So lucky me. But $60 I would say is maybe a little steep for what the game actually has on offer. If this was on sale, kind of like what I did with, I said this, like I gave my thoughts about Mad Max like last year around September. I rented it from Redbox and I was like, I got what I got out of it. If I ever saw it for like $20, I'd buy it. And that's kind of what happened actually with Mad Max. If I saw this for $20, it'd be totally worth picking up. Or wait until it's on sale at Redbox, which I have recently discovered you can buy games from the Redbox kiosks. Some of them, not all of them. And they occasionally have sales, so it's worth waiting around for. Like, I got Mad Max for like $8. It was great. Yeah, I don't have the case, but I don't really care. I didn't really care about that for Mad Max, But yeah, so kind of a tepid recommend. If you were really into open world games, if you really just kind of like these third-person action games. Unfortunately, it just does not do a remarkable job of anything. But for some reason, all put together with the story and even kind of with the mediocre gameplay and the mediocre open world, like it is just enough where you feel mildly satisfied. If you have kind of no expectation for it. I did not, like I said, I was kind of excited about it, and I was getting more excited the closer it was to coming out. But I never was like dying to play it. Like if I hadn't been able to play this for a few months, like I wouldn't have been like, oh, I can't wait to play Mafia 3. I wouldn't have had that like kind of reaction to it. but kind of having low expectations or kind of indifferent expectations, I guess. I was okay with it. I was okay with it. And if you're just into this genre in general, you might enjoy it. If you kind of like tedious open world games, you might enjoy this game. I guess. Like there's a crowd out there for it. For tedious open world stuff. There is. These games, this genre sells a lot of games. So, if you have enjoyed, I would say if you enjoyed Mad Max, you enjoyed Just Cause 3, or if you or the Assassin's Creed series even, just that in terms of also being kind of tedious. If you kind of like the way those games are structured and built in terms of like mission sets and what you have to do in those missions and how it's kind of the same thing just in different areas over and over again. Like if you kind of like that gameplay loop, I think you'll probably be pleasantly surprised. I think you'll be okay with it. So I don't think it's going to be your favorite thing in the world, but like I said, if you wait for it to be on sale, I think you'd probably be like, not feel like you totally wasted your time. Alright, well that's going to do it for me, everybody. I'm Shaun, and I will talk to you guys next time I got something to talk about.